Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta. You're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a check of the top headlines this hour. Russia, Ukraine and the United States hold rare trilateral talks in Abu Dhabi, marking the first joint meeting since the war began. Officials say negotiations will continue today as well. United Kingdom's Prime Minister Keir Starmer criticized Donald Trump for calling troops of NATO sidelined in Afghanistan. Meanwhile, the White House has rejected this criticism. Trump accuses Canada of blocking the Golden Dome project over Greenland and warns of closer China ties. This comes as Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen calls the situation serious in Nuuk and says Denmark and Greenland will act together. A massive winter storm hits the US, forcing over 1,800 flight cancellations and causing power outage risks. At least 15 states declared emergencies as snow, ice and strong winds disrupt travel from Texas to New England. US Border Patrol defends detention of 5-year-old in Minneapolis immigration crackdown. Officials say child's father was targeted, but action sparks outrage as schools and community question safety. Senior Iranian official warns it will treat any attack as an all-out war and vows a strong response. The statement comes as the US had an armada heading toward Iran. Turkey's Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan warns Israel is seeking an opportunity to attack Iran. He says any strike could further destabilize the region and urged all sides to pursue a different path. Tesla removes auto steer from standard models in US and Canada. Customers now have to pay $99 monthly subscription for full self-driving features. Alright, viewers, now on to the top focus. Diplomatic talks on the Ukraine conflict are continuing in Abu Dhabi, with discussions set to resume today, January 24. The first meeting of the trilateral Russia-US-Ukrainian Working Group on security issues took place on January 23, with the Russian delegation led by Igor Kostyukov and Ukrainian negotiators headed by Rustom Umarov. A Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov highlighted progress in the conflict resolution efforts, stressing the importance of implementing the Anchorage formula for a long-term solution. According to Peskov, a long-term solution to the conflict will depend on resolving territorial issues in line with this formula. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky shared that his recent visit to Davos included discussions with Trump, resulting in the provision of PAC-3 missiles for Ukraine's Patriot system. At the World Economic Forum in Davos, Ukraine also secured agreements aimed at supporting the restoration of its economy, particularly in energy sectors. All right, joining me now in this discussion is Matthew Wadham. Matthew is a journalist and joins us from Washington, D.C. Matthew, thanks very much for joining me. Firstly, how do you see the talks, the trilateral talks that are underway? Do you think this is really going to bring in the much needed peace?
Well, it's promising that they're having trilateral talks in Abu Dhabi. I don't know if it's going to lead to peace, but there's certainly the possibility that it could lead to peace. I think that the two sides that count here, Russia and Ukraine, are still very much apart on the issue of Donbass, on who gets to keep the Donbass region. Russia captured it through military conquest, and Ukraine says that's not fair and they want it back. So I'm not sure what exactly they're going to do to, what has to be done to get the two sides to agree on that issue. But that seems to me to be a major sticking point. And unless the American mediators can pull a rabbit out of their hat, as the saying goes. I suspect it's not going to be resolved at this conference, but it's still possible that they could make progress.
Right. Matthew, to talk to us about the anchorage formula that's been discussed upon in yesterday's topic meeting, and how do you think that is going to be implemented?
I don't know what it is. I'm sorry. What is? I don't know about the Anchorage formula. Can you tell me what it is?
Well, a Kremlin spokesperson spoke about the highlighted progress, and he stressed on the need of imposing this formula for a long-term solution, and we're also yet to get more details on that. But Matthew, anyway, do you think as far as the security guarantees are concerned, Ukraine will be appeased with what it has on offer as of now?
It's possible, but the security guarantees are helpful. I think that, and that would oblige, I think, the United States to offer these security guarantees for 15 years. And I understand that France and the United Kingdom are willing to send troops to enforce the peace there. But the main sticking point is the territorial dispute over Donbass right now, and I'm not sure if it's going to be resolved anytime soon. The idea, I wasn't sure what you meant by the anchorage formula, but I see it means it's just discussing Russia having control over the Donbass.
Yeah, the territorial
region
concessions to Russia
right,
by Ukraine is what it means.
and freezing the current borders. Okay, I wasn't sure that's what you meant, but apparently that's what you meant. And I don't think Ukraine is going to be amenable to Russian control of Donbass, and I don't think they're going to be agreeable to keep the current territorial borders in place unless Ukraine is offered something to compensate for the loss of its sovereignty over the Donbass region. And I'm not sure what that would be, but the deal sweetener is going to have to be something big, or Ukraine is not going to agree to it.
All right, Matthew. Just stay on with me as we move ahead now. Viewers, let's also tell you that Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni spoke to reporters in Rome after meeting with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, emphasizing Italy's firm commitment to cooperating with the United States. Meloni said both Italy and Germany have historically enjoyed strong ties with Washington thanks to trade, mutual investments, and American military bases in both countries. She highlighted the strategic importance of the Arctic, noting that the US is raising a real issue there, and stressed that NATO needs to coordinate and increase its presence in the region. Meloni also revealed she had asked Trump to reconsider aspects of his Board of Peace initiative, which Italy currently finds unconstitutional in order to allow fair participation. Let's hear that.
Che la nostra volontà di cooperazione con gli Stati Uniti rimane una volontà di cooperazione salda. Direi che Italia e Germania, che sono entrambe nazioni che in Europa intrattengono con gli Stati Uniti storicamente, insomma, relazioni privilegiate che sono date dagli scambi commerciali, che sono date dagli investimenti reciproci, che sono date dal fatto che in entrambi i paesi vi sono delle basi americane, possono aiutare in questo rapporto. Penso che Italia e Germania lo possano fare particolarmente se lavorano insieme, anche grazie a un approccio, diciamo così, pragmatico e non istintivo alle relazioni con gli Stati Uniti d'America.
Request Matthew to join us back in the discussion here. Matthew,
Right.
would you say US would be happy with increased NATO presence uh, and deployment of troops of NATO in Arctic,
In
in the Arctic region?
in the Arctic region, yeah. I think that's exactly what the U.S. has been pressing for. The U.S. wants the European Union to properly defend Greenland, because Denmark has not been, according to the U.S., Denmark has not been stepping up to the plate and doing what it's supposed to be doing. Though, that's largely the responsibility of the United States to patrol Greenland as per a treaty between the United States and Denmark. But yes, the United States wants European Union countries to send troops to the Arctic to defend Greenland uh, and to
So if Greenland is
and to
defended by
ward
NATO
off
troops,
aggression from Russia and China.
all right. So if that happens and Greenland is defended by NATO troops, will Trump really then require Greenland, as he has been claiming so far, for US security?
Will Trump want to seize Greenland and make it a U.S.
Yeah.
territory?
Yeah, because the reason that he cited was that he wants to secure
Right.
Greenland, like you said, against Russia and China. But if Greenland is already secure with, say, increased presence of NATO troops, should that not, end the need for the U.S. to acquire Greenland, as Trump has been wanting?
Yes. Yes, my guess is President Trump would back off from his demand that the U.S. take over and occupy Greenland. President Trump's negotiating style is to make an outrageous demand and then to temper it down and to make everybody upset so they all start reacting to it. And then he'll offer a toned down, a more reasonable request, and then people will breathe a sigh of relief and say, "Oh, this is so much better." We're amenable to this. We're amenable to this more reasonable offer. So yeah, I suspect this is what President Trump has been after all along. I don't sincerely believe that he wanted or necessarily expected the United States to occupy, to take over Greenland. He just wants American interests in the Arctic to be better protected. And if his huffing and puffing and threatening, Denmark over Greenland is going to accomplish that, then I think he will be satisfied and drop his demand that the U.S. take over Greenland. That would be my guess.
Sure. And Matthew, how do you see the fact that even though Trump has withdrawn the tariff threat on European Union countries, Europe has really not spoken much about the trade freeze that it has effected with the US?
Well, the trade freeze that you mean that it affected with the U.S. as a result of his threat to levy tariffs on European countries that don't agree with his stance on Greenland, then I don't see any reason why the European Union countries wouldn't back down at this point.
But they haven't. That is exactly my question. They haven't yet backed down on the trade freeze that they said.
Maybe they don't trust President Trump at this point, because he does he's mercurial, and he does tend to change his mind a lot, and he speaks off the cuff and says stuff that comes across as extreme, and then a couple of days later he will go back and modify his statement and make things seem more reasonable. So I can understand why the EU is not backing off just yet. They want to see how this thing is going to develop, and they're a little scared of President Trump, and I can understand their perspective. This is a guy who attacked Iran to wipe out its nuclear capabilities, nuclear power capabilities, and research labs and so on for nuclear weapons. And then he attacked Venezuela to take the president, Maduro, back to the United States to stand trial on narco trafficking charges. He's a man of action, and they view him as somewhat of a cowboy, and they don't trust him. And I can see their perspective. They want to they want to step back and give things time to develop.
Matthew, thank you very much for joining us then. And moving ahead towards a U.S. border patrol official has defended a 5-year-old's detention in a massive immigration crackdown in Minneapolis. U.S. Border Patrol Commander at Large Gregory Bovino has stated that his team is expert in dealing with children. Meanwhile, thousands of people have braved icy conditions to protect the U.S. government's immigration crackdown in Minneapolis amid anger over the detention of the 5-year-old migrant boy. This comes as it was reported that Liam Conejo Ramos was taken by federal agents along with his father from a running car in the family's driveway to a detention facility in Texas. Earlier, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance also defended federal immigration agents, stating that the boy himself was not detained and stressing that his father was an illegal immigrant. I now invite retired Lieutenant Colonel Himanshi Singh, who is a defense and international relations analyst from New Delhi, to join me. Well, thank you very much, Ms. Singh, for joining me here. Now, the ICE has been given a clear mandate by the U.S. federal authorities, but its methods of action are under widespread criticism. How do you see ICE going on what it's mandated to do without really taking these extrajudicial steps?
Thank you, Kriti. See, ICE was designed as an enforcement and investigation body to counter serious transnational threats, human trafficking, narcotic networks and cartel finances and illegal arms flow. Now, instead of doing its own duties, it is being used as a frontline instrument of deterrence and including that against minors. So when a law enforcement architecture meant for national security is applied indiscriminately, the line between defense and coercion blurs. See, this is where the American hypocrisy is exposed. Washington lectures the world, particularly Iran, on human rights and proportional use of force and the treatment of civilians. It highlights internal unrest in Iran, detentions and state coercions as the evidence of authoritarian behavior. But we see at home, world is watching an image of 5-year-old child being detained by immigration and customs enforcement agencies, guarded by armed federal agencies. So it is very, very disturbing. And from geopolitical perspective, if we see, the optics are very, very catastrophic. See, United States has no consistency in what they say and what they act. So I think when they are condemning Iran and suppressing civilians while justifying detention of a 5-year-old child under armed supervision, I think global audience, especially the global South, will not like the moral preaching by America. And they will argue definitely that American human rights, they advocate and do moral policing of the world whereas inside the moral fabric is collapsing. So national security is not just about hard borders, Kriti. It is also about moral legitimacy and strategic credibility.
Yeah.
So when agencies like ICE, they become a symbol of fear rather than security, law and deterrence, I think American soft power, it erodes.
Yeah, sure. That's a very good point you raised. Anyway, the fact that ICE is continuing to defend the fact that it detained a 5-year-old, which I don't think can really be defended, even if it goes on to say that it's expert in dealing with children, is justified at all, because a 5-year-old's detention I don't think is allowed anywhere in the world.
Absolutely, Kriti. See, the juvenile detention is done under different circumstances or not under the armed protection.
Yeah.
So when we see America compromising on the ethics, the legality, and it is somehow damaging the social fabric and democracy of America. for which America has been a champion for such a long time. So definitely, I've seen images and I've seen, one of these anchor on television, she started crying. So, people are actually devastated by detention of such young children, not just a child. There are so many images, and it is definitely going to create a moral outrage and a street protest, because they are trying to send a message. The ICE and the American authorities are trying to send a message that they're uncompromising on these issues. However, if we see from a humanitarian point of view, they have already compromised the values. So I think this reflects a broader global trend where immigration is being shown as a hybrid threat, that it is they are doing human trafficking, they are doing narcotics. How can a 5-year-old child be involved in such illegal activities?
Yeah.
So if they are even trying to detain such small children, the facility should be there. They cannot just send them to random places or the shelter homes where the basic facilities do not exist. So this is very, very sad. And for United States, the border is no longer a domestic policy issue. I think they are trying to do strategic pressure on Mexico, Central America by doing so. But however, internally, we see a lot of stress on people, and it is not going to be very good for the stabilization narrative which America gives to the world.
Right, Lieutenant Colonel, do stay on with us as we proceed. Viewers, a powerful winter storm has now swept across much of the United States. Officials are urging caution, particularly in Houston, where even a minimal ice accumulation could make roads dangerous. With the storm bringing snow, ice and plunging temperatures, more than 150 million people across the southern plains, Midwest and East are under weather winter alerts. Listen into what a local resident has said.
So think about a piece of paper. This amount of ice, this edge, you'd call it trace amounts of ice. But even that much ice would impact a roadway and make a roadway very dangerous, impassable. And so that's really our biggest threat.
In Tulsa, Oklahoma, outreach workers are scrambling to assist the homeless population as shelters fill up and long lines form. Josh Sanders, the director of outreach at the Tulsa Day Center, emphasized the urgency of the situation, noting that many residents were unprepared for the sudden cold after an unusually mild winter. Let's listen in to what he had to say about the aid supplied to the homeless at this point.
We're trying to get supplies to people who aren't willing or able to go into those shelters. We've got a lot of people who aren't willing to leave their belongings in their encampment for the weeks or days while they go into a shelter. It's kind of all they've got left that they're holding on to, and so they choose to stay with their belongings in these encampments. And so our teams are going to go out, they're going to follow up every day. We're going to try to make sure the folks that are staying in their tents don't have to leave their tents.
The National Weather Service has warned that the storm could cause hazardous travel conditions, power outages and dangerous wind chills throughout the weekend. Airlines have issued travel waivers and energy operators are bracing for potential strain on the power grid as Arctic air settles over the region. Now moving on, viewers, a senior official from Iran has stated that Iran will treat any attack as all-out war and respond in the hardest way possible. This comes amid rising tension in the Middle East as the U.S. military prepares for a significant build-up in the region. Meanwhile, Turkey's Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan has revealed that Israel is still seeking an opportunity to strike Iran, warning that such a move could further destabilize the region. Furthermore, the UN Human Rights Council has voted to deepen its scrutiny of Iran due to concerns over the ongoing crackdown on protests that have led to thousands of deaths. In another development, the U.S. has added 8 companies and 9 oil tankers to its sanctions list, targeting entities linked to Iran's oil trade with restrictions on their operations. All right, request retired Lieutenant Colonel Himanshi Singh to join me back in the discussion with the first comments.
See, what we are witnessing, Kriti, is a collection of, not just a collection of isolated headlines, but a coordinated escalation ladder being climbed simultaneously by diplomatic and military fronts. So when Turkey's minister says that Israel is still seeking an opportunity to attack Iran, it is very significant because Ankara is not just speculating, it is signaling that regional intelligence assessments and indicate persistent that Israel believes in contingency planning. We've seen earlier that Israel prefers preemptive strikes over the strategic surprises. And parallel to this, when we see that UN Human Rights Council is voting to deepen security of Iran, so it adds another layer of international legitimacy building. So I think they are trying to politically isolate Iran, which is already under so many sanctions. USS Abraham Lincoln has already moved with all its the entire shipments and the warfare equipment. So this is a very, very serious issue, and Iran's response that any attack will be treated as an all-out war must be taken seriously, because Tehran does not believe in bluffing or rhetoric. It is a strategic shift from patience to deterrence by punishment. And Iran's strength, as we all know, it does not lie in conventional air power, but in asymmetrical warfare. So it will, activate its proxies the moment it sees that something is coming towards it. So the entire maritime disruption in the Strait of Hormuz, Red Sea will happen. And it is not going to remain a bilateral war. It is going to be a regional issue. So when the United States is adding 8 companies and 9 tankers to its sanction, and the list is tightening, so I think they are trying to avoid use of kinetic force. But this kind of pressure will definitely, have 3-track confrontation. First of all, Israel, it is seeking to degrade Iran's nuclear power and the strategic capabilities. Secondly, US is trying to weaken Iran without using the force of power. And Iran is attempting to deter attack by raising costs to unacceptable regional level. So the danger lies in miscalculation. Anything can trigger the war. So we have to see how these 3 powers who are there in the Middle East have to actually be very, very patient. One strike, one proxy, or one maritime incident can trigger a cascading, leading multi-front conflict involving not just Iran, but Lebanon, Syria, Gulf, and the global energy routes. Kriti.
All right. Thank you very much, Lieutenant, for joining us then with your assessment. And now moving ahead, viewers, a former Canadian Olympic snowboarder, Ryan Wedding, has been arrested in Mexico and brought to the US to face charges. Wedding was on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list for allegedly running a massive cocaine trafficking operation within the infamous Sinaloa cartel. His operation involved smuggling hundreds of kilograms of cocaine from Colombia to North America, generated over $1 billion annually. Furthermore, he is charged with ordering several murders, including the killing of a US federal witness in Colombia in 2025. However, after years of effort, the FBI, in cooperation with the Mexican authorities, has finally captured him. This marks a significant victory in the fight against global drug trafficking. Let's listen in to the FBI director.
Today, we are announcing a capture of another FBI's most wanted top 10 fugitive, Ryan Wedding. That makes 6 top 10 FBI captures in 1 year alone. And just to tell you how bad of a guy Ryan Wedding is, he went from an Olympic snowboarder to the largest narco trafficker in modern times. He's a modern day El Chapo. He is a modern day Pablo Escobar. And he thought he could evade justice. But these brave men and women put together a prosecution package, put together an investigative package, put together an operations strategy. And here we are today, bringing him to justice for trafficking hundreds of kilos of cocaine and also for the murder of innocent civilians. This individual and his organization in the Sinaloa Cartel poured narcotics into the streets of North America and killed too many of our youth and corrupted too many of our citizens. I also want to have a tremendous shout out to the government of Mexico. President Sheinbaum, Secretary Harfuch, and the military and law enforcement officers in Mexico worked hand in glove with our teams on the ground there to apprehend last night in Mexico City, Ryan Wedding. I was privileged to be there on a previously planned trip, and this was a great operation that came together through interagency success.
Viewers, that's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.